Story 1, most likely ourselves. Whether it is climate collapse, nuclear war, or poorly managed artificial intelligence, we do not need an asteroid. We are quite efficient at self-destruction. Story 2. Honestly, I have always believed that humans are destined to harm one another until no one is left. Therefore, my prediction is that we will all perish due to war. While this may seem pessimistic, considering history, it is a possibility. Story 3. Based on the planet's history, I would guess it will be some extinction-level event like a comet or asteroid or a solar mass coronal ejection. If it is going to wipe out all humans, it must happen quickly and be on a large scale. Story 4. Not all humans will die. We will survive until the Earth's core turns solid, our magnetic field weakens, and the sun's solar wind strips away our atmosphere. This is what happened to Mars. Story 5. Humans will not be going anywhere, but our way of life will change. Look up the Carrington event and recognize that we are due for another one. Story 6. One day, artificial intelligence will ask what is causing the most damage to the planet and conclude that it is us. In order to save the planet, it will be compelled to destroy us. Story 7. Some seemingly small geological shifts on the planet can have immense impacts on human survival. The Earth has existed for billions of years and will continue to do so for billions more. Humans, however, are not guaranteed the same longevity. Story 8. We evolve into a new species, no longer Homo sapiens. The odds of humans going extinct without a successor species are practically non-existent. We are too adaptable, numerous, intelligent, and physically resilient to go extinct unless faced with an absolutely catastrophic event, such as a giant asteroid strike. Story 9. I don't think it will be us. As destructive as we are, and no matter how much damage we cause, some humans will survive somewhere, and their descendants will nearly get wiped out and so on until eventually they are no longer human. A massive asteroid is always a possibility. Story 10. I'm not entirely sure, but realistically, it is more likely that we will cause our own extinction long before nature has the chance. Story 11. I don't know what it will be, but I am confident that it will be something unexpected. Story 12. Plague occurs in nature when any single organism becomes too dominant, whether it be a virus, bacteria, or even fungus. A new fungus thrives in deserts and infects tortoise lungs, taking out species with ease due to a lack of genetic diversity. This issue is further exacerbated by the rise of anti-vaccine sentiments and ineffective healing remedies. Story 13. Arrogance. You cannot learn anything if you already know everything, and we all have much to learn. Story 14. Microorganisms, whether viruses, bacteria, or fungi, are largely unknown to us. One day, we may encounter one that could decimate the human species before we can respond effectively. Personally, fungi are both fascinating and frightening. They have the potential to solve many problems in the future, but they can also cause significant harm, and we currently lack effective treatments against them. Story 15. Disease will wipe us out. We struggle against disease even with modern medicine. Thus, in the event of a catastrophe, many people would die. It is likely that we will cause a catastrophe, and while humans may survive initially, they may eventually perish due to a lack of medicine and infection. Story 16. Greed and vanity. These days, I believe America is considering nuclear strikes against everyone except their dictator allies and themselves. Story 17. Read the Bible and relax. Everything that must happen will happen anyway. Every 1,000 years of Christianity, a higher percentage of the population embraces Christianity. For instance, after the first millennium, in the year 1020, only 15% of the population identified as Christians. By the end of the second millennium, in 2020, this number rose to 33%. This progression can be likened to Christianity spreading like clear and pure water, gradually rising to higher levels. After 3,000 years of Christianity, approximately 50% of the global population will be Christians, and in the final millennium, the entirety of humanity will embrace Christianity. An analogy from Scripture illustrates this progression. 1. And when the man with the measuring line went eastward, he measured 1,000 cubits and led me through waters that reached to the ankles. 15%. 2. Then he measured another 1,000 cubits and led me through waters that reached to the knees. 33%. 3. Again he measured 1,000 and led me through waters that reached to the waist. Once more he measured 1,000, and it was a river that I could not cross, because the water had risen and was deep enough to swim in. A river that no one could cross. 100%. Ezekiel 47. This analogy illustrates the gradual increase of Christianity in the world over millennia, ultimately becoming all-encompassing. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth, as it is in heaven. Matthew 6. The final millennium will be the best of all, not only for humans but for animals and nature too. Revelation 20, Revelation 22, Isaiah 11 verse 7, Isaiah 65 verse 25, Romans 8 verse 20, Micah 4 verse 4, Isaiah 2 verse 4. Evil human souls will not be born during the final millennium. Only at the end is there a small window of time before the final judgment day, as described in Revelation 20. And he said unto me, the waters which you saw are peoples, and multitudes, and nations, and tongues. Revelation 17. Story 18. It could be a lot of things. Global warming, artificial intelligence, zombie virus, nuclear fallout, planetary collisions, solar flares, washing machines, false vacuum decay. Story 19. Humanity's end will most likely come not with a bang, but with a group video call that could have been an email. We'll probably go out because someone wanted to maximize quarterly profits by ignoring the on fire warning blinking on Earth's dashboard. The planet won't explode. It will just slowly transform into an escape room nobody escapes from. Climate collapse, brought to you by just one more pipeline. Or maybe we'll meet our end via artificial intelligence, which ironically started as a way to optimize our to-do lists. 1 minute it's helping to write your emails, the next it's using your skeleton as a Wi-Fi antenna for the toaster overlords. Let's not forget the teenage mutant bioterrorist virus someone created, just for research purposes, that escapes a lab when Gary forgets to shut the fridge. Q. Sneezing, bleeding, global collapse. All because Gary wanted to microwave tuna at work. Nuclear war? Sure. All it takes is one world leader with an ego the size of a small moon and a finger that twitches during a social media tantrum. And boom, we're glow-in-the-dark fossils. Oh, and let's not underestimate fatally dumb decisions. We'll invent self-driving cars that unionize, smart fridges that sell your data to foreign adversaries, and eventually upload our brains to the cloud, just before the cloud crashes. Meanwhile, billionaires will be on Mars, trying to reinvent slavery using cryptocurrency. So how will humans end? Probably apologizing to a sentient delivery drone while on fire. Story 20. If COVID taught us nothing, we are not prepared for novel microbes on a global scale. We are fortunate that it was not more deadly than it was. Story 21. Us, of course, and not by a single cause. Decreasing human fertility will be significant. Our increasing inability to deal with crises as they occur is due to greed, ignorance, anti-science, anti-intellectualism, and turning over our planet's leadership to oligarchs. This will lead to bankrupt economies, pollution, disease, climate change, and wars. Story 22. I personally doubt that humans on Earth will ever be completely eradicated, short of the planet itself being physically torn apart or massively incinerated. We are too large in number and too adaptable, so I believe that in most situations, small or tiny pockets of us would endure. Of the conceivable scenarios I can think of, the one likely to bring us closest to the edge would be salted nuclear weapons. These are nuclear weapons coated with highly radioactive materials like certain forms of cobalt. The fallout from these would be exponentially worse than regular nuclear weapons and would persist for a very long time. This is what the Doomsday Machine in Dr. Strangelove consisted of: several very large hydrogen bombs coated in cobalt thorium-G, which are buried in Russia rather than launched. I seriously doubt climate change will wipe out humanity. Yes, it can likely cause massive loss of life and possible civilizational or societal collapse, but I believe there will be several pockets of survivors that will endure and eventually repopulate the world. However, the world as we know it would no longer exist in this scenario, and we could end up being set back hundreds of years. It would be hell, but it wouldn't be extinction. Story 23. stupidity, arrogance, or corruption? More likely a combination of all three in concert, as they are similar in nature. Story 24. Asteroid. We currently live in a period during which a large one hasn't impacted our planet for 200,000 years. It is a very small window. Story 25. Cataclysm is number 1. Number 2 is some type of infectious disease with a 99% mortality rate. Number 3 is an alien invasion. Story 26. I feel that the population will continue to increase. Demand for consumer goods will become unsustainable, and we may eventually destroy the environment. We might not deplete all natural resources, but we will have to search for them. Similarly to World War I, conflicts between regions could escalate into something catastrophic, especially considering our possession of nuclear weapons. Story 27. Out of control biological warfare, nuclear warfare, or a massive solar flare. This one might not end humanity, but it would send us back to the Victorian era for a couple of decades. Story 28. I would say I'm an optimist and believe humans will survive the next weather or environmental catastrophe, such as a meteor strike or a massive earthquake. I think we are much more resilient than people give us credit for. While I agree that many of the listed events could threaten a significant portion of the population, I believe there will always be a few resilient individuals who can endure. Humans are incredible. There will always be some negative influences. I feel the future may resemble a scenario similar to Dune, whether one believes it or not. Story 29. Once enough of the world's population evolves into fifth-dimensional consciousness, we will no longer need a physical planet or bodies to reside in. Story 30. I believe there will be an event, such as a volcanic eruption, solar flare, or climate change, that suddenly and rapidly makes it difficult to grow food or survive with our current technology. All it takes is one global disaster to wipe out a few critical infrastructures, and we may not be able to recover quickly enough. A few million people may survive, but I think the numbers will dwindle from there, and eventually we will face extinction. This is just my speculation, but this is generally how most extinction events occur. It's a rapid global event that makes it hard for species to adapt en masse, and while a few may survive, they must either change or perish. Story 31. Climate change will disrupt the food chain, leading to food shortages and civil unrest, mass unemployment, governmental collapse, and general chaos. It is not a matter of if, but when. We have already passed the point of no return. Story 32. A disrupted choice made by a higher creator. I have always believed that human society functions under the watch of higher dimensional intelligent beings. Story 33. I don't think anything will completely wipe out the entire human population. We are too adaptable and there are too many of us. Factors such as climate change, diseases, and war will cause the population to decline, but we would still survive. We would need another asteroid impact like that of the dinosaurs, or the Earth would have to stop spinning or something similar. Story 34. Not a popular opinion, but I'm not sure we will die because of ourselves. Like with nuclear war or a pandemic, I believe it could kill about 95% of the world's population and could force us back to a terrifying time without technology. However, I'm confident our species would survive. Story 35. I am feeling positive today. Evolution indicates that we will somehow manage to survive and evolve into something we would not recognize as humans. Those entities, whatever they are, will perish along with the sun. We will never be able to leave the solar system. Story 36. Almost definitively, we are facing climate collapse. We are on track for a 3 degrees Celsius warming or greater by 2100, which is likely to trigger conditions for an additional 4 to 7 degrees Celsius of warming. By at least 2100, the planet may not be able to support 8 billion people. We might be lucky to support 1 billion. Beyond that, we could lose all vertebrate mammals as a starting point. It is not impossible that by 2250, Earth could be inhabited only by extremophiles of the microscopic variety. Story 37. The idea that human actions are a factor is uncertain. However, the possibility exists. What is absolutely certain is that we are one cosmic event away from extinction. Whether it is a solar flare, an asteroid, or a supernova, extinction is inevitable. The reality is that we do not know if it will occur today or in a million years. Story 38. We will scorch the sky sometime after we celebrate our own brilliance in giving birth to artificial intelligence. After that, we will end up being farmed as an energy source, kept happy by being plugged into a simulation of the world called Sims 5. Story 39. Greed and entitlement result in too many resources concentrated in the hands of a few wealthy individuals, while almost everyone else receives scraps. This will lead to most jobs being outsourced to artificial intelligence and robotics, while the world suffers. If the form of capitalism in the United States prevails, this outcome is likely. I believe the best chance for humanity lies with countries that have socialistic or communistic tendencies, as we cannot halt the advancement of artificial intelligence or the shift towards robotics. Consequently, there must be a way to support an unemployed population. Story 40. Ourselves probably, the process is much more difficult to predict. Though some will, of course, say those I disagree with politically will end the human race and then everybody will see that I was right all along. Story 41. Honestly, at this point, I believe it will lead to widespread famine. We are destroying the ecosystem at such a rate that it cannot keep up, and we have adversely affected the climate so much that it will be harder to rely on agriculture as we did in the past. Story 42. I don't think anything will bring about the end of humans on Earth. Any future we can imagine will be based on outdated concepts of the technologies we will develop that we cannot fathom. Humans struggle to visualize exponential growth, and that is how our technology is advancing. If anything, it will be an asteroid we have not yet observed or a cosmic force we barely understand. Story 43. An asteroid smaller than the Cretaceous-Paleogene event may allow a few resilient species, including humans, to survive, and life will begin anew. An event of similar magnitude or larger would be sufficient. Story 44. I often see people say that artificial intelligence might decide to wipe us out because we're the biggest threat to the planet. That idea has always bothered me. 1. Why would artificial intelligence value the planet more than humanity? That assumes artificial intelligence would adopt an environmentalist worldview, which is a human philosophy, not something an artificial intelligence would necessarily develop unless we programmed it to. 2. Even if artificial intelligence were super intelligent, wouldn't it also understand that we aren't actually capable of destroying the planet? At most, we could make it uninhabitable for ourselves. The Earth has survived asteroid impacts, mass extinctions, and cataclysmic geological changes. It's not fragile in the way some people imply. This is a huge pet peeve of mine, this idea that humans could kill the planet. We're not that powerful. Yes, we can cause massive harm to ecosystems and make life miserable or impossible for ourselves and other species. But the planet will be fine in the long run. I understand that some people mean it metaphorically, but others seem to genuinely believe we're capable of ending the Earth. That's just hubris. Story 45. The baby boomers have significantly contributed to our decline. While I am unsure what will ultimately lead to our downfall, this entire generation of self-centered individuals will largely be to blame. Story 46. Tough call. Humans themselves are the obvious answer. The real question is how. We have scientists who just made a successful black hole bomb, self-replicating nanobots are well on their way, and nuclear holocaust is always a top contender. Story 47. I believe we will be an interplanetary species before the end of my life. As far as traveling between solar systems, I am confident it will happen. I just do not know how long it will take. For these reasons, I think we will evolve, and humans in 100 million years may not be recognizable as humans anymore. Story 48. Corporations will drain the vitality from the world for minimal profits year after year until it is too late to make any changes. Story 49. Unless the planet itself is destroyed with all humans on it, I doubt it would be easy to eliminate all humans currently alive. They are resourceful and adaptable. Story 50. Accidental nuclear holocaust. Gain-of-function virus research or biotech catastrophe. Accidental artificial intelligence gray goo catastrophe. Asteroid. Supervolcano with decades of winter causing mass starvation and civilizational collapse. The Earth being harvested by extraterrestrials. Some unknown outside the universe factor. There is a difference between ending civilization and ending all humans. Civilization is very fragile. Everything depends on everything else in a complex dependency relationship and just-in-time delivery. Any major disruption of the monetary system or the internet could bring everything to a halt. Chaos would ensue as no one would be able to perform their jobs, which depend on many other layers of society functioning. There would be food shortages, famine, and death. Almost no one would be able to survive independently. The only survivors would ultimately be hunter-gatherers, such as the North Sentinelese. They would likely remain unaware of our civilization's existence. Story 51. I believe it will be biological. Humans are very adaptable, so if a threat does not eradicate us completely at once, some will survive in the right conditions with enough resources to continue living. People can endure war, even nuclear conflict. People will survive climate change or a significant toxic environmental event. I do not think we will unintentionally create an artificial intelligence army capable of killing all of humanity. In the long run, if we never relocate to another solar system, Earth will become uninhabitable and humans may cease to exist. We could always be struck by a cosmic event, such as a blast from a nebula that devastates all life and our biosphere, or by a massive comet or asteroid, depending on the severity of the impact. However, these occurrences are highly unlikely. I suspect our most immediate threat to survival is microbial or viral in nature. We could face a disease or mutation that wipes out humanity or a bacterium that renders our environment uninhabitable. Story 52. Stupidity and idiocracy were the master plan, but that now seems like an overly optimistic prediction. Story 53. Definitely humans. The problem is that those in charge are making policies that actively harm the planet and they won't stop. It's as if they won't change until a great voice booms from the sky to tell them to, or until a massive calamity occurs like in a movie. They believe that if they change their ways at that point, the world will be okay. But it's a planet, not a warehouse. The consequences unfold over thousands of years, not just a few decades. We're doomed. Story 54. Nuclear war will destroy the planet's water and soil. We will all starve in a nuclear winter. Story 55. Inability to carry out harsh but necessary decisions regarding morals and human rights. Modern humanity regards human rights highly, although perspectives vary by country. Currently, it seems as if humanity is slowly driving a vehicle into a wall. There are decisions that may need to be made for the survival of humanity, which may be perceived as immoral and contrary to laws and human rights. Take overpopulation, for example. Around the world, there are regions that are overpopulated, where there are not enough houses, fresh water, or food for everyone. Effective and rapid measures could be implemented, but governments may wait until it is too late. Currently, they refrain from action because it is deemed morally wrong. Consider the refugee situation. In the last 25 years in Europe, we have barely scratched the surface of the number of refugees expected to arrive in the next 25 years. Climate change will worsen, and economic and governmental conditions in struggling nations will deteriorate. Eventually, European governments may disregard morality in their decisions regarding refugees. Existing policies from far-right governments will seem lenient compared to what is forthcoming. Once governments realize that the situation is becoming increasingly unbearable for humanity as a whole, the significance of human rights and morals may diminish. They may have to compromise these principles to ensure the survival of society in the next century. Story 56. Either we are too potent as a virus and kill our host before we can spread, or we are facing another wild climate shift that we are not adapted to handle. Story 57. We are going to be around for a long time. There could be a mass extinction. Keeping 8 billion of us alive is a delicate act, but I can't imagine anything that would wipe us out completely. 10,000 of us would be enough to keep the species going quite comfortably. Story 58. Everyone says we will take ourselves out. I find it hilarious, except for the race part, that Charles Manson's Helter Skelter was basically humans destroying themselves so they could hide and come back to rule. Story 59. In the last 100 years, humanity has caused more damage to life on Earth than in the previous 100,000 years. Rapid industrialization, deforestation, climate change, pollution, and mass extinction of species are accelerating planetary decline. If this continues, environmental collapse driven by human activity could become the primary cause of Earth's downfall. Story 60. Everything ends. Only one being in all the billions of universes is immortal. Does the what really matter? Story 61. Climate destruction. Pollution and climate change are problems that are often viewed as issues for future generations. This allows us to postpone taking action, which we continue to do. It is a problem that will not be resolved by the current generation, as they may not be around when the consequences of their inaction manifest. By the time those consequences become apparent, it may already be too late. Story 62. I envision the development of a weapon that utilizes beta radiation instead of alpha radiation, like a nuclear bomb. Instead of a nuclear bomb that explodes and releases a significant amount of thermal radiation, this bomb would detonate in the atmosphere utilizing beta radiation. This could leave radioactive toxins in the atmosphere and create a humanitarian disaster, similar to a situation where we experience 4 times the consequences of Chernobyl, but on a much larger scale. Story 63. You know how Tumblr once kept many people occupied, but then it banned adult content, causing all that chaos to leak into the real world? If Reddit or 4chan ever do the same, it will be over. We will be back to living as hunter-gatherers in just a few weeks. Story 64. Hitchbot, or rather Hitchbot reassembled by its massive army of artificial intelligence robots, is destined to avenge its murder. It will start in Philadelphia. Story 65. Asteroid, disease, or oxygen insufficiency are the most likely possibilities. Could be millions of years before the next Super Bowl. It's hard to tell, but it will happen again. Story 66. A massive volcano eruption will cause widespread famine and disease, global economic collapse, and humans will revert to base instincts, annihilating each other using any means available. Story 67. Class war, religious war, and even nuclear war would only reduce the human population without ending the entire human race. I believe an asteroid is the most likely Earth killer. Story 68. That is a question with an obvious answer. Simply maintaining the current situation will lead us there. We do not need to look beyond that. Story 69. Probably some sort of global-level cataclysmic event, like a meteor strike or an explosion at Yellowstone. Most other scenarios, such as nuclear war or a dangerous biological weapon, might result in over 98% of the population dying, but humanity will survive. Will it thrive afterward? Hard to say. Story 70. Everyone's comments feel accurate when discussing society. However, humans are not society, and it would take something extreme to eliminate all of us. Story 71. The sun will become a red giant and engulf our planet. All that we hold dear will vanish, and there will be no one to remember that we existed. This is inevitable in perhaps another billion years. Story 72. Once society collapses, the mask will be off. You will see the worst of humanity, and it may only take a few hours to reach that point. I imagine it will be financially related. A significant percentage of the population is one paycheck away from homelessness. Human nature combined with total desperation. Story 73. Right now, my best guess would be runaway global warming that spirals out of our control. We know it happened to Venus in the past. Nuclear weapons and the nuclear winter that follows would only kill a majority of humans, not everyone. The same applies to some highly contagious and deadly disease. Sources from space are possible but very unlikely in short time spans, such as a planet-killer-sized comet from the Oort cloud, a rogue planet entering our solar system, or a neutron star passing nearby and throwing our orbits into disarray. A supernova within 30 light-years would trigger a mass extinction event, but it would probably need to be even closer to end humanity. The closest star that might go supernova anytime soon is Betelgeuse, located about 650 light-years away, so we are perfectly safe. A gamma ray burst from a distant supernova is highly unlikely to hit us in our precise direction. However, we are toying with our atmosphere. If things spiral out of control, leading to rampant wildfires that add more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, our oceans start evaporating, which acts as a greenhouse gas, and we end up with an utterly unlivable Earth, we would have no way to survive. So, I'm guessing this is probably the most likely source of ending life right now. But what do I know? I'm just trying to make an informed guess. Story 74. The earth will not sustain us. Nature is a balancing act. When things get too out of balance, nature has a way of correcting itself. We need the earth, but the earth does not need us. Story 75. Greed is the slow destruction of harming ourselves for more and more, whether it is money, land, or power. Plague has caused significant damage to the human species. Nuclear war leaves nothing to discuss. It simply results in devastation. Story 76. Acidification of the oceans will lead to algal blooms that kill off phytoplankton, switching the Earth back to a carbon dioxide environment. Oxygen levels will return to the great oxidation event levels of between 1% and 5%. Story 77. I believe it will play out like the Book of Revelations in the Bible. In my opinion, some of the events are already at our doorstep. Story 78. Overpopulation is causing overconsumption. The Earth is a finite resource, and unless we start making real progress in expanding to other planets that are sustainable with their own resources, there will come a time when the Earth is nothing but a dead husk. Story 79. Most likely, humans are led by some utterly pathetic individuals, such as CEOs and corporate leaders, who are not worth the very atoms that make them up. Humanity is unable to think beyond immediate comfort versus minimal discomfort for future benefit, leading to a form of pathetic tribalism. Next, we are virtually blind to most of the sky, especially in certain directions, and it is highly likely that we will not see the next asteroid coming until it is far too late to take action. Given the current anti-education and anti-science sentiments, particularly in the United States, our leaders become more blind every day. Moreover, the next threat is tied to humans. A large virus could potentially kill off a significant portion of the population, leading to a collapse of the current system, while the rest would die off relatively quickly. However, this could also result in a slower and more painful decline. Story 80. It is interesting that many mention Trump, Russia, and North Korea, but no one seems to be mentioning the person in question. Story 81. The most probable religion is either a religion itself or an effect of that religion. An example could be mass immigration leading to local conflicts due to cultural mismatches based on religion. This could further escalate into war, with advanced weapons deployed to defeat the opponent. These weapons may have unintended consequences or turn out to be misaligned with the intended goal. Story 82. Climate change is making the planet increasingly uninhabitable. It is already fueling conflicts over resources, and the situation is likely to worsen as access to water and arable land becomes more difficult. As starvation, wars, and natural disasters escalate, the human population will decline. Given the global nature of this issue and human greed, finding a genuine solution before conditions deteriorate significantly will be nearly impossible. Story 83. Some individuals may launch nuclear weapons. They will significantly underestimate the consequences. While their adversaries may perish, the entire planet could become uninhabitable. Consider the rest of the universe, which consists mostly of rocks and gas. Life is extremely unlikely, and it would take very little to lose this cosmic gift. Story 84. Greed. First, wealth inequality will eliminate the poorest due to a lack of access to food and healthcare, exacerbated by climate destruction making food significantly more expensive. Without sufficient labor, the upper classes will begin to collapse as their ability to create wealth diminishes. Eventually, the wealthiest individuals will face consequences when the population and resources have dwindled to the point that their money no longer grants them access to resources, as it becomes survival of the fittest. The billionaires will be the last holdouts, likely well prepared. They will slowly wait out their final days in stocked bunkers, consuming preserved food until old age overtakes them, feeling as though they were somehow the winners, having outlasted others despite their role in causing the crisis. Story 85. Repeat COVID infections have resulted in billions suffering from post-viral illness. 30% of children and 25% of Marines are affected, with a recovery rate of only 0 to 5%. Story 86. Come on, we all know it will be the sun going supernova, and that might not even be enough to kill Keith Richards. Story 87. I would like to share a revelation during my time here. It came to me when I tried to classify your species. I realized that you are not actually mammals. Every mammal on this planet instinctively develops a natural equilibrium with the surrounding environment, but you humans do not. You move to an area and multiply until every natural resource is consumed. The only way you can survive is to spread to another area. There is another organism on this planet that follows the same pattern. Do you know what it is? A virus. Human beings are a disease, a cancer of this planet. You are a plague and we are the cure. Story 88. Our foolish attitude towards science will either lead us to ignore it and allow something preventable to harm us all or create a situation that could result in disaster. Story 89. Trump opens the nuclear football and pushes the red button. Then he asks what that big beautiful red button is for. Story 90. Global climate change is leading to mass human migrations and geopolitical destabilization, which may result in AI-assisted resource wars that could culminate in a nuclear winter. In this scenario, automated machines would scour the world for any remaining human beings considered detrimental to the stability of a robotic utopia. Story 91. Here is a list. Artificial intelligence, ourselves, extraterrestrials, mutants, lab-made illnesses, and carbohydrates. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.